Welcome back everyone, Vlad here, and today we're going to be talking about industrial automation stakeholders. So this is a concept that I had assumed falsely that is relatively simple, but after having conversations with a couple of different groups, it seems that they don't have deep understanding of the different stakeholders in industrial automation and in manufacturing as a whole. And I believe that it's a reason why a lot of different groups, especially coming from the software side, may fail depending on how they address some of the conversations with these different partners. So let's start with what I would call an end user. So an end user is basically defined as a manufacturer of finished goods. So for example, when I started my career, I worked for Procter and Gamble, I worked for Kraft Heinz, and both of them were producing finished products for the consumers to purchase. And so those would be end users. So I'm going to put example P&G, Kraft Heinz, and there's going to be obviously other examples, Mondelez, it could be Unilever. So end users produce the product that will be consumed by the general public. So the end user is going to utilize industrial automation machinery in order to produce their finished goods. So they're going to be purchasing, whether that's hardware, whether that's software, whether that's process or mechanical equipment, to accomplish their goals. Their main concern is rarely the manufacturing side. So there's going to be a few companies that will lean into manufacturing as their primary source of revenue, but ultimately a lot of these companies are very good at what's called branding. And we're not going to get into the entire business structure and explain what branding is, but ultimately they derive a lot of the value of the products that they make through branding. So next we have systems integrators. And so a systems integrator plays a very important role when it comes to the end user. So the end user typically will have a staff of people, of engineers and operators that will operate equipment as it stands on the production floor. So day in, day out, the end user will put out pallets, will put out cases of a certain amount of their product. The systems integrator is who helps them augment or better their manufacturing, right? So systems integrators are usually hired on a contract basis or on a project basis in order to come in and help support the end user. So I'm going to draw this line where basically the system integrator provides tech services for the end user. So this could be installing equipment. This could be designing to some extent the control system. This could be deploying SCADA and MES types of systems. So think of the systems integrator as the partner for digital transformation for the end user. In most cases, you do not want to have a lot of resources tied up at the end user who are working on such projects, because you have basically a oscillating wave of projects. So sometimes you need more resources, sometimes you need less. So it makes sense to contract that out as the need arises. And that's the reason why systems integrators play a very important role in the manufacturing space. Next, what we have is what I would call an OEM, or original equipment manufacturer. And so OEMs will come in different flavors. As I mentioned, there's going to be software and there's going to be hardware vendors. And so in my experience, very rarely would an OEM just sell whatever product they have to the end user. And let's understand a little bit more as to why. So if it is a software product, so here I'm going to put software, the ability of an end user to install said software on their own. So that software could be a SCADA product, could be an MES product, could be some kind of a monitoring type of a solution, is going to be relatively low. So the end user is focused on running their plants, on building equity in their branding, and ultimately selling that product through a supply chain to the customer. So they're not going to always have the capability to deploy said software. So in most cases, the OEM will sell that software to the systems integrator, and of course the cost will be passed to the end user, but the reason why it's sold to the systems integrators, that they can provide the services of deploying that software. So I'm going to maybe draw this arrow as like a double step where it goes to the end user at the end of the day, but there's going to be a two-step process. And so again, there's a lot of different examples. This could be your Rockwell, this could be your Siemens, this could be inductive automation. A lot of those packages are not always deployed by the OEM. Now, it's important to understand that there's going to be some caveats. So a lot of OEMs will have internal groups that can either consult or help supplement some of those efforts. So of course, there's going to be nuances and some of them will provide that service. Now, on the hardware side, the flow is a little bit different. So I'm going to add yet another category, and that's going to be your distributor. And so distributors can have the capability to deploy, but more often I would say that they carry a variety of different products that they can then sell to the end user. So a distributor is basically someone who can issue so you're going to get a PO, you're going to get a quote, and then you can purchase parts from the distributor to the end user. So a lot of times the distributor sell products to the end user, and then the systems integrator will help integrate those products into those facilities. Sometimes, and this would be maybe a smaller arrow, the distributor will sell to the systems integrator. The systems integrator would then integrate whatever solution that is for the end user. So in this case, again, obviously the distributor can quote software, but I would say this is a little bit less of the revenue than the hardware. So here I'm going to create another bubble. So the OEM creates the hardware, and then the hardware is going to be passed to the distributors and then sold to the end user. Now, there's going to be a lot of nuances with distributors. What you need to understand is that in the North American market, there's going to be quite a few differences from the European markets. And so the distributors will have their geographical areas. And so as an end user, it might be tempting to say, hey, we're going to pick up the phone and call the distributor out of Florida because there's lower taxes, and we're going to get a break on the hardware that they're selling. That is a huge problem because ultimately the way the current, I want to say, landscape works in manufacturing is that you should always be purchasing and you should always be attributing the sale to your local distributor. So there's going to be some nuances that you need to navigate as the end user or systems integrator or OEM or distributor when it comes to getting some of that hardware. And so in a practical sense, I can give you an example from a lot of different projects that I have done in multiple plants across the US. If I have a specific plant, for example, in Virginia, I will have the contact of the distributor that is local to that specific site that I can call, and I can get quotes for the specific bill of materials that I have put together for a project. And so then that distributor is going to obviously quote all the parts that I need. There's going to be a PO issued, and we're going to receive those parts at the end user before we begin any work. So again, it's important to understand how you purchase some of that hardware and software if you're in any one of these situations. Now, again, I do want to preface that with the fact that distributors are also starting to build out the capability of integrating some of the products, or at the very least supporting some of their products that are being installed, right? There's nothing more frustrating than a distributor that cannot answer a single question about the product that they carry. So usually you can still pick up the phone, call the distributor, and they will be able to assist you with a variety of different questions that you may have. So the other stakeholder that I want to bring into this is a machine builder. And a machine builder is basically a company that will create the machines. And so here I'm going to draw this big arrow coming from the machine builder to the end user that will be producing the product of the end user. So in my experience, machine builders can have one of two types of machines. And again, this is going to be extremely important if you're working for an end user or for a systems integrator to understand two types of machines that they can make. So number one, they can provide a as-built machine that they have developed. So for example, if I want a brewing kettle of a specific size, I can go and find machine builders that have already solved that problem. If I want to find a slicer, there's going to be companies that build, for example, meat slicers or cheese slicers or graters, for example, of a build that I can just purchase right off the shelf without making any modifications. Now, of course, I say that a little bit in air quotes because usually there's going to be different options. Sometimes you can negotiate the control system, sometimes you can negotiate what kind of data is accessible, and that's going to be a whole other conversation. But basically, type 1 of machine builder is they will have a catalog of specific machines that they can build, and you can pay them with very fixed pricing. Number 2 is a custom machine builder, right? So a lot of companies will develop, as I've mentioned a little bit earlier, their own proprietary machinery to build the products that only they carry, and that is going to be their differentiator. So ultimately, they will call upon machine builders that can build machines based on the prints that they have generated, and those prints are going to be mechanical, electrical, and of course process, to explain to the machine builder how they need to build the machine in order to accomplish the process. And so at that point, the machine builder is going to review everything from A to Z and be able to quote a custom machine build for that specific manufacturer. Of course, on the legal side, they would not be allowed to resell that machine per se to somebody else, right? So you want to have very stringent legal protection in place so that they cannot turn around and sell the machine that, for example, Procter and Gamble has purchased to somebody else that is a competitor. Of course, the machine that is off the shelf and is freely purchasable by anyone can call that machine builder and make that purchase. So once again, very important to understand those nuances. I'm adding just a couple of arrows, so the distributors, of course, will serve machine builders, and there's going to be a lot of different nuances to this as to how big or small the companies are. So if you look at OEMs, for example, it is very important to understand as you build your software or hardware, what your relationship is with the systems integrators and with the end users. Because once again, if you start selling, for example, your software package directly to the end user, perhaps that the end user is not sophisticated enough to install that software package on their own. And now that you've undercut these systems integrators inside of that chain and you've made a software that only you can deploy, you're going to be put in a very bad position. So if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts on any of these topics, happy to get on a call and explain a little bit further. Of course, I'm oversimplifying and giving you a 10,000-foot view, but you need to understand some of these stakeholders if you're planning to enter the industrial automation or manufacturing space, or if you're operating already at one specific company and you're just trying to understand as to why some of these, I want to say, different interactions are in place. Happy to chat, happy to answer any questions, and I will see you next time.